Hey guys, welcome to Ukrainian couple from sunny Pittsburgh. And aside from being shelled every single day, where dozens of people are dying in Ukraine, Ukraine is also suffering from rolling blackouts. I mean, this has been happening all over November so far, but now there's a possibility that this could last throughout the winter. Ukraine is on the brink of humanitarian catastrophe this winter after weeks of intense shelling attacks on the country's energy infrastructure. People that I know personally, as well as Ira, she knows people, and there are tens of millions of Ukrainians are struggling. They're just struggling, living without any energy supplies. So while we are here enjoying 10-degree weather, which is like, I think, 40 or 50-degree weather, people in Ukraine they're getting below zero temperatures, and they're, looking at 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's been snowing in many areas. Well, how do you get blackouts in Ukraine? Well, Russia unleashed a new missile attack on Ukraine's substations, transformers, and hydroelectric dams. All that means that nearby adjacent hydroelectric power plants, including nuclear power plants, have been shut off. In fact, Ukraine lost 3 functioning nuclear power plants as these stations disconnected to protect the power supply of Ukraine and to avoid disaster, essentially. The result is rationed electricity to the max and a huge demand for generators. By the way, the United States gave Ukraine dozens of these generators, and basically what they're just helping Ukrainians survive day to day. But at the same time, using a generator comes with the inherent risks of getting carbon monoxide poisoning. For example, a man in Ukraine died and his wife and children were taken to a hospital because he left his generator running in his house. I mean, I know, right? But what does all of that mean to the people on the ground? Well, it's not just the fact that you gotta live in darkness for just a few hours. I mean, you have your streetcars, trolley buses, the subway doesn't run, right? By the way, you have also the occasional air raid that you have to worry about, which also stops the subway from running. You cannot have a shower. You cannot wash your clothes. In some cases, you get no water because some pumps and water pumps and heaters require electricity, right, to run. And it means the food in your refrigerator goes bad. It means that there's no internet. People cannot really get any work done. It means elevators don't work in your house. So if you have a wheelchair, you have mobility issues, and you live on a 20th floor, right, you gotta deal with a lot of walking up and down the steps. But more importantly, it means no power to the most vulnerable. Just yesterday, I was reading about a girl that had to go to a gas station to set up her breathing machine, right? Because she had no electricity in her house. And surgeons in Kiev's Heart Institute, they use flashlights to continue operation with no power and no water. The Ukrainian government and utility companies understand this, and they're doing what they can. They're providing generators in case power outages. They're made available supplies of water, food, and fuel. Even Elon Musk has provided his Starlinks to help with communication problems and internet, essentially, in Ukraine. But some areas, like the recently liberated area of southern Ukraine and Kherson, things are more dire. I mean, these areas are getting shelled daily by Russian rockets. So breathing machines don't work, X-ray machines don't work, and these hospitals are really in dire situations because they really cannot they cannot even get reliable electricity to treat their patients. I mean, the head surgeon of the hospital says there's only one portable ultrasound machine, in the whole hospital, and have to carry it up and down, the flights of stairs all across the hospital. This head surgeon at the Kherson's Children's Hospital was holding a piece of shrapnel found in a 14-year-old boy's stomach. And he says children are coming in with severe head injuries, severe trauma, severe shrapnel wounds. And in November, after airstrikes injured a 13-year-old boy, a team of health staff had to go up and down the steps to get him to the emergency room in the dark to amputate his arm. So now let's answer the question of why is electricity being restored so slowly? Well, you know how Moldova also had blackouts, even though only Ukraine was targeted with this energy terrorism? Well, electricity generation is not distributed or consumed evenly. Well, what do I mean by that? Imagine you have a big tub divided into 5 sections. There are taps supplying water in all of them, and water is being drained out of all of them. Does that make any sense? Well, let's consider that 2 of these faucets, they have a stronger flow than the other 3, and water from these 2 containers are being drained out more slowly. And the other 3 containers have a weak flow out of the faucets, and water from these 3 containers is being drained out at a faster rate. So, to avoid overfilling the first 2 containers, in other words, flooding the population, or in this case with electricity, setting everybody on fire and burning everyone, the flow is carefully redistributed between all these areas in the tub. So, when Russian missiles fell down on Ukrainian transformers, power lines, generators, the flow of water, so to speak, stopped between the one container and the other one. Most importantly, the 2 fast-flowing faucets are turned off. But once all the water drains out, the logical thing to do is to turn on the faucets, right? Actually, not really. Because, the drain we were talking about? Imagine this drain being slowly plugged up. After all, if no electricity is coming out, then it's not being consumed, right? That's why turning on the faucets again, or in this case electricity, is a dangerous thing. It must happen step by step, giving a little more generation capacity and giving this chance of consumption to be restored. And that will sort of return the balance to the equation. Of course, there are still many variables, but in general, this is how it works. So what has happened in Kiev, Dnipropetrovsk, and the Donetsk regions, the power industry has partially restored electric supply. Partially restored means that critical infrastructure facilities are already connected, and hospitals and thermal power plants and pumping stations almost all throughout Kiev and Dnipro area are pretty much working. But aside from critical infrastructure, you have the people, right? You have regular households, and people are still the ones suffering. Like people with special needs, like diabetics, people with heart diseases, children with breathing problems, that they need mechanical or some sort of electronic assistance, right, to survive. And the situation is complex, as you can see, and there's no really quick and easy fix to the situation. And as you can see, I think Russia can apply this pressure. They can apply this, energy terrorism to Ukraine throughout winter, and nobody can do anything about it. And you're going to ask, why weren't there transformers and the power stations protected? Well, I don't know. Then you're going to say, why can't you just order a bunch of more transformers and build another power plant? Well, it's not like you can actually go on Amazon or call your Chinese supplier and get a transformer. These cost millions, they're custom built in many cases, and they take many years to build and commission and to test. There's a lot of regulations involved there. So it's not a quick fix at all. So, you will say, if this situation is so dire, why can't people just leave? Well, there are 3 main reasons. Reason number 1 is family, elderly relatives. I mean, I can see that being the primary reason why somebody is not going to leave as opposed to somebody that can leave. Others would want to live in a familiar environment, despite the war, despite the suffering, despite the blackouts. And I believe they think that they can't or they won't be able to adapt in a new place. And that's why they are not they're staying put. They don't see themselves anywhere else, essentially. Other people, I think that's probably the minority. They think it's just wrong to leave their country, their brothers in arms, their compatriots, their communities. They just can't do it. The reason number 2 is little to no money. I mean, we have to understand that Ukraine is an economy operating in a war economy, and this economy is in ruins. Many jobs have gone. They're paying meager wages. You can barely survive on them. And you have the added blackouts. They're pushing people, companies to close down or to just move operations somewhere else, somewhere where it's safe. That means that unemployment is pretty bad and people cannot find a job anywhere that they're looking for to find a job. They just can't do it. And the reason number 3, they're not allowed to leave the country. As you probably know, Ukraine banned most men from leaving the country. Anybody from ages of 18 to 60 cannot leave the country, and that's another reason why people can't leave. It's just like a huge percentage of the population is just stuck there. They cannot get up and leave. And others are living in occupied territories, let's not forget that, or to the areas close to where the fighting is. The cities in those areas, the occupied territories, are factually ghost towns. I mean, you have to understand what it's like to live in a place where you have no credit cards, you have the Russian rubles in circulation, you cannot get any of the simple things that you wanted to get done, you have the destruction, you have the Wild West, you have essentially lawlessness. Many people they just choose to stay put. They don't try not to get their head above water too much. The people that are living there, that's probably millions upon millions, they're all living as hostages to the situation. They're living in this dead zone of the Russian world, so to speak. But instead of the word Russian world, I will use Russian horror, I will use Russian coercion, Russian scare tactics, this bondage essentially. They are in bondage, unable to escape, unable to make a sound, unable to make a peep. In many cases, yes, unable to even get outside from their house. And with that, I think I will leave it. I don't know, support Ukraine again. Let's do all we can. If we can, we'll send some money to some organizations that are sending generators to Ukraine, help them get through the difficult winter ahead. All right, guys, so take care, have a good one, and I'll see you next time.